I don't talk much about my job. And even with friends and family, I find myself not really knowing what to say because sometimes there are things that not everyone can understand, and this is why I came here. I'm pretty sure most of you will. And I thought you could also be interested in learning more about the place in which I work. You see, I'm a park enforcement patrol member. Basically, what I do is making sure, along with my colleagues, that the park is a safe and welcoming place to all visitors, and we also make sure that they follow our regulations. However, not all of our regulations appear on our website. This is for security reasons. So we must instruct visitors as soon as they arrive about our extra list of rules. Our park is a very nice place actually, and there are amazing sights and landscapes to look at, but this doesn't mean there are no dangers. As much as any other place in the world, there will always be some. So this is the reason why you must be careful if you ever decide to come and visit us. I am not comfortable with revealing either my real name or the exact location of the park, but I promise I'll do my best to give you as many details as possible about the strange events that happen here. You see, our park is a very regular place, in fact. Our staff members and the visitors are not the only ones roaming here. For that reason, we also provide group tours to increase the safety level, because sometimes the rules are not enough. You know, some people just won't listen. They'll laugh about it, think of it as a joke, and then get in trouble. Only problem is that in most cases we find them when it's way too late to give a hand. I'll start from our very first rule. 1. Avoid the dogs. If they come at you, do not pet them and continue walking. Just ignore them. They can't touch you if you don't touch them first. Seems weird, right? What dogs are you even talking about, you may ask. Now, you must know that we don't allow any pets into the park to keep it clean, and this should act as a warning already. This in fact means they are not real dogs. My first encounter with one of them was unpleasant. I was still a newbie, so I wasn't alone, luckily enough. Otherwise, I don't think I'd still be here to tell you my stories. Me and my colleague, we'll call him Tom, were patrolling through an area that wasn't much popular among the visitors, probably because there is always a nasty smell in the air, like of rotting eggs. When I asked Tom, that had much more experience than me about it, he said they tried many times searching for the source without finding anything really concrete. We were walking down a pretty narrow path when all of a sudden a dog came out of the bushes. It looked kinda old and the fur was dark as coal and covered with dirt. Then, it started approaching us, wagging the tail. I tried moving towards it because I thought it was lost, but I felt an arm blocking me, and when I noticed, I turned my face to the left. I realized it was Tom, a scared expression plastered on his face. Don't move. Don't touch him. I was confused. I looked at the dog again, and then it looked back at me. I felt my heart jump. There was something unnatural in the eyes, something that I can't quite come to explain. I can only say that at that moment, something felt extremely wrong with it. Yet, the thing that looked like a dog didn't come too near us, and simply stood there, wagging its tail and looking at us, waiting. Then, I understood why Tom told me not to touch it. The thing couldn't touch us unless we touched it first. I stepped back, and so did Tom. A few seconds passed, but it seemed like we had been standing there for minutes. The dog then growled and disappeared into the bushes, leaving me and Tom finally alone. This was my first encounter with one of these quote-unquote dogs, but not the last. I've met them many times, and yet I've never managed to understand what they truly are. What I know, however, is that you must never touch them. How is it possible that our staff is aware about this? The following story was told to us, the new recruits, after we found out about their existence. Many of us didn't really understand the situation, so they started explaining where this rule came from. Once, one of the members of the old task, the park has been open since 2017 now, decided it was a good idea to pet one of them. When he did, he wasn't alone. There was another colleague with him, and they saw everything. We usually don't go patrolling alone, but rather in couples or groups. Back to the story. That colleague saw the dog suddenly standing up on two legs and getting taller and skinnier. And then, it devoured the man that touched it. It swallowed him whole, leaving the other poor guy in a pure state of shock and terror. When they found him, he was still shaking and he was as pale as a ghost. That is the end of the story. When they finished telling us the incident, I saw the other recruits sharing a worried look on their faces, but how could I blame them after all? Still, the dogs are not even the worst part inhabiting the land. Sometimes, humans are way more dangerous than the monsters we picture, but we don't know whether this is human or not. That is our second rule. 2. On the evenings, you might encounter a man with a screaming mask. If you see him, run as fast as you can. Do not let him get close. The park closes at 8 p.m., so this means that you may encounter him from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. During these hours, it is suggested to pay attention and do not isolate yourself. I was pretty disturbed by this one the first time I read it, and I still am. Most patrollers didn't meet him, thank God, but some of us did. And, unfortunately, as you might have guessed, I am one of those. Aren't I just blessed? As mentioned before, we usually go in couples or groups, but one day, I insisted to go patrolling alone one last time before the closing. And weird enough, I was actually granted the permission. I was walking through a very common area, which is a small clearing where families and couples usually have picnics. The wind was howling through the trees and the sky was painted in orange and red. I kinda zoomed out for a second, closing my eyes to the peaceful sounds of the nature, the chirping of the birds, the wind, and the cracking of the twigs. I opened them back quickly. It sounded like something heavy broke the twigs. I stood there trying to understand where the sound was coming from. The sound of a footstep. Careful footsteps. Then someone came out of the tree line. It was a man. He was very tall, and he was wearing all black from head to toe. A long coat with a hood, and big leather boots. He also had on a mask of what looked like a scream. A white long face with empty black holes where the mouth and eyes should have been. What alarmed me the most yet were his hands, stained in red. He was also holding what seemed like a hunting knife, and a dark red liquid was dripping from both. I didn't scream, I just ran, as fast as possible. I could hear him getting closer and closer, but I wasn't going to give up. The base was near. I just needed to resist a little longer, and then I would be safe. At one point while I was running, I didn't hear him anymore, so I turned. He was standing there half hidden by a tree, observing me. I looked behind. There were other patrollers there. When I looked again at the tree, he was gone. I ran to my colleagues and explained everything that happened. When they took me back to the base, my boss was mad. Of course, but decided not to fire me because I was a good recruit after all, and said I should use this as a learning experience. Never go alone patrolling. And in fact, I never dared to do it again. After this, they told me that this person was suspected for the disappearances of some of the visitors during the years. Well, actually, it wasn't a total disappearance because they had found all the bodies. When someone goes missing into the park, well, our squads and the police department go to the same spot, an old crooked tree, where the bodies are hanged, all bloody, and with all black trash bags on their heads. We know he's the one that killed them because, well, obvious reasons. Those who saw him and managed to escape all claimed his hands were stained in red, and that the liquid was from his knife, and it was fresh. We have no idea why, but we and the police never managed to catch him. It's like he disappears. And if you're wondering how many people usually go missing into our park, well, it's a pretty good number actually. Around 5 to 6 a month, I would say. We tell their relatives that they just disappeared or that they died in some sort of accident because the police, they don't really want to create a panic since the killer is nowhere to be found and there are too many bodied and 0 traces and clues. So yeah, I do not suggest that you go alone at any time in the park, but you should just not go alone in general, no matter if it's during the daytime or not. For today, I think this is all that I will share. I'm very tired and with a horrible headache, so I'll just head to bed. I will talk to you guys soon and share some more of the rules. I truly hope that you enjoyed my stories for the day. It's me, again, and today I'll share with you some more facts about the park. I'll try to update as much as possible, but I can't promise to post every day because my job here keeps me busy. I'll try my best not to disappear still. Also, I'm sorry for the small spelling mistakes in the title of the previous blog. My keyboard just goes nuts sometimes, and sorry for the eventual grammar mistakes too. English is not my first language, guys. This should give you an extra clue about the location of the park. If you remember last time we were talking about why it is recommended not going alone either during the daytime or the evening, I will start with our third rule now. 3. While walking, you might suddenly feel a bit dizzy. If you do, make sure not to sit down under a tree. You can sit where you want, but not under trees. What's with the trees, right? Well, actually we have no idea. We had many visitors claiming to feel like this at one point while walking, and most of them were alone when this happened. So this is why we suggest you are not alone. Also, those of them who decided to sit under a tree in that very moment were found asleep, but they wouldn't wake up for some reason. They were all taken to the hospital, but when arrived, they all had apparently fallen into a coma. Again, I honestly believe this is much worse than dogs or even the screaming man. That's how we name the dude now, because we never managed to explain this phenomenon. We know that the dogs are not real dogs and that the man may not also be a human, but yet this thing scares us more because we have little or no control at all over it. We can, as usual, just hope our visitors will listen to our advice. So yes, if you don't go alone, there's no possibility of this phenomenon. You might also wonder how we remain so calm knowing how many people actually die or disappear here, because yes, some people do disappear too, never to be found again, no matter how many times we try or where we search. Well, truth is, we try not to show it, and to be cold. I know it's not really nice, but it's the only way to do this job. We need to move on and to think about ensuring the visitors' safety, because even if we feel bad, it's our job to make sure that they don't. And we also have to make sure that they follow the rules. This, however, was just one of the many examples I could do about the situation. Another interesting rule that just shows how dangerous wandering alone through our park is the following. 4. If you suddenly hear a voice calling your name, but you came alone, absolutely do not turn around. Continue walking, but whatever you do, you must not, for any reason, look behind you. Me and my other colleague, Jessica, were patrolling together one of my ex-favorite areas, where there is a small waterfall. The view is amazing and surprisingly, not many visitors go there, so it's always peaceful. I said ex-favorite area because what happened next convinced me to never return to that area ever again. I love my job, but sometimes I wonder if I should leave it. There are some places that I always refuse to go patrolling unless we are in a big squad. The more people, the better. The higher the number of people in the group, the less unpleasant things happen. You know what I mean at this point. We were talking about something that I can't quite remember. Maybe it was fitness. But still, we kept our eyes open. We heard many things about the place from the oldest rangers, so we really didn't want to mess up. They told us many stories about the voice, yet we never heard anything going there, or at least not until that day. This was the first and last time I have ever heard the voice. It came like something in the wind, clear yet distant, and called my name. We froze. Jessica looked at me, and I remember the warning. So I didn't turn around. The urge to do so was strong still, so she had to hold my hand to comfort me and prevent me from doing something that I might have regretted. Then I heard it again. The voice continued calling me, so, in the meanwhile, I listened more carefully, concentrating on its sound. It just sounded so wrong. It sounded imitated. I simply knew it. I knew this thing was trying to mimic a human being. But why? Why was it doing that? Me and Jessica started walking faster in the direction we were facing, without ever looking back, but I swear that night, I still heard the thing calling me while I was in my bed before falling asleep. So yeah, I never went to the waterfall again. Now, we don't specify on our special rules list where those phenomena take place, because it would probably scare the visitors. But we still try our best to make sure they go out there safely. Now, I also feel like you would be interested in knowing other details about the park, especially about others of the special visitors. With the term special visitors, we refer about those who look like human but probably aren't and often appear in our park. They usually have specific locations, and this allows us to easily understand most of their patterns. However, we do not dare underestimating them. I already mentioned one in my previous blog, the Screaming Man, but there are others like him that may just be as dangerous. So here, I'll share with you another rule. 5. You may encounter a man dressed in a tan jacket, with a fedora and sunglasses who is sitting on a brick wall. If you see him, do not engage him in conversation. However, if he asks you for your name, lie. Do not tell him your real name. If then he asks you for your deepest desire, you shall not lie, because he will know. But if you lied about your name, he won't be able to harm you. I, thankfully, never encountered the man in the tan jacket, but I have witnessed another park security member who did. This is one of our best rangers, we'll call him Mike, so we were all pretty anxious to know what happened. Now this is an old one, but since you never heard about it, I think it's gonna be fine. Mike was patrolling an area that wasn't too far away from the main trails. He wasn't too far, but he wasn't too close, and he said that he was starting to feel a bit tired, so he sat down on a brick wall. We do have some brick walls in the parks, and even though it's not really my cup of tea, I admit they are useful to sit down on if there are no benches available. Mike was just taking a little break when he heard someone sitting next to him, and when he looked up, he opened his mouth in surprise. There was a man, but there was something weird about him. He was very tall and kind of heavy built, but not fat, and he was wearing a tan jacket, a fedora, dark clothes, and black gloves. He also had a very gray scarf and sunglasses on. The weird thing, though, is that they were in the middle of the summer, so it didn't always make sense. Why should someone wear such attire with the heat? Even I, as someone who is always cold, wouldn't dare wear that during the summertime. It just didn't make sense. Plus, he never heard this guy coming. He swore in his own soul that he didn't hear anyone walking, and that a few seconds before, no one was there. He told us that the man stared in his direction, like he was waiting for something, but Mike, creeped out, stood up and ran away. This is where his tale takes a sinister turn. He was heading back to his car, that was in our parking lot, that evening, after a late shift, but when he took the car keys, he felt like he was being watched. Many people say that you will know if someone is observing you, and I believe this is true, because it's like your body is giving you a warning, much like a survival instinct. It was already dark. Again, we close at 8 p.m., so he couldn't really see much, because we don't have many street lamps and it's a natural place and we try as much as possible not to ruin the Earth Paradise facade. He tried squeezing his eyes, and when they adjusted to the penumbra, he saw him. The man in the tan jacket was standing just a few meters away, watching. He immediately got into his car and left, but what happened during the next few days made him almost give up his job entirely. He claimed that the man started following him everywhere, daily. He would spot him outside his flat, looking at his windows, or when he was patrolling in the park, even when he was just going grocery shopping at the mall. The man in the tan jacket always stood there, emotionless, staring right at him through the crowd. Luckily enough, one day, all the tan jacket man's stalking activity ceased. We don't know if he gave up or simply got bored by it. But what scared us most anyways was the fact that there was no way the strange man could have known where Mike lived. Maybe he tracked him or something like that. This is still a mystery, but maybe this is not even the scarier part about this special visitor. You see, before telling you Mike's story, I mentioned the special visitors not being human, or at least that is what us, the staff, believe, because of something else he does. To be fully honest with you guys, I encountered only a few of them, and I'm very glad about it. So most of my stories regarding them will be from my fellow friends that happened to visit the park, and obviously never returned here again, and obviously my colleagues. After Mike's stories, we all agreed that it was better not to irritate this man, so we started, whenever we saw him approaching us, carrying on conversations with the subject he was surprisingly, nice about, and he was really well-mannered, other rangers say, and they had great talks with him. However, the time for them to go kind of came. The man would always ask for what they desired the most. Bizarre question, right? Those who told him, along with their real names, started experiencing unpleasant events in their lives. Things would start going horribly wrong, and based on their final answer, it became a nightmare, full of pain. But don't think those who lied were safe. It has been proved that those who lie about their name and not about the last question are safe, while if you lie about the last question, he will get mad and you will start bleeding profusely and without apparent reason. Problem is, a few people died here because of that, and those are the things you can't easily forget. You can't forget about people dying and facing horrible endings, getting hurt and disappearing. We force a smile on our face and keep patrolling because we need money for food and to pay bills, but the truth is, we all really want to give up deep down. This place is just wrong. Also, I believe the man in the tan jacket can't hurt you if you don't tell him your true name, because based on legends, knowing someone or something's true name gives you power over them. Do you think this is true? I would like to know of your thoughts about the whole situation. I'm very happy that you guys are appreciating the things I have to share. I can't really talk about them with my family, so knowing that someone out there is interested about what I have to say and actually believes me is a relief. At least, I'm not in this madness alone. By the way, some of you mentioned that the rotting egg smell in the area could be like some sort of demonic activity, but to be honest, I'm not really sure about it. I tried asking other rangers, but they have no idea. I also tried with my boss, and again I received the same answer. I'll see if I can go back there and find something, because not because I'm stupid, I guess, but I just need answers. I promise I'll be careful. In the next update, I'll tell you more about some of the other visitors too, and about a few more phenomena, if I get the chance. In the meantime, make sure you are safe, and that you don't go on adventures without knowing enough certain places. Well guys, I always try to keep my promises, so I went back to that trail again and gave a better look around. But, before we head into the story, I would like to say that I'm astonished I got such positive feedback. It makes me so happy to hear that there are people out there who appreciate my effort in collecting and telling these events, and that can actually understand. Again, your support means a lot, and I will never say thank you enough. As I was saying before, I inspected that area but didn't find much, apart from the dogs. Though this time, they kinda stared at me. It's not that they don't stare at you usually, it's just that There was something in the way they were looking at me that screamed, "What are you doing?" But it looked more like a warning. I don't know how to explain it. I just felt that there was some sort of message, so I quickly went back to patrolling and minding my own business. Again, I tried asking other rangers, but no one really had any answers to give me. I also got a few messages regarding the dogs, and no, they don't stick to that area only. You could meet them wherever in the park. Just remember not to touch them for any reason, and if you have children, keep your eyes on them at all time, especially if you see the dogs approaching you. Because come on, all kids are like going to pet animals. And for God's sake, if they need to go pee, follow them and wait outside the toilets. Now, this may seem a bit too excessive, but you have no idea how many people go missing here. I told you the number of victims of the Screaming Man, but this doesn't mean that there aren't other people who die here for other reasons or go missing. In fact, the number is always increasing, so we must always be on alert. I don't know why they haven't closed everything already, so that nobody can't get hurt. It seems like there's a reason behind them wanting to keep it open to the public. Something here, I'm telling you, feels wrong and the police department knows, but they won't do a thing. It's like they both have some kind of deal of silence. Something happens to people. Everyone keeps their mouths shut so that it's always a tragic accident. No questions from newspapers or others. No need to close the park or admitting that they don't know how to do their job properly. Angers me, however. I'm the only one of the many rangers that are even trying to find answers, and all I can do is keep trying to keep visitors safe because I'm just a normal person behind this blog, not some sort of heroine, and I do need to survive somehow. It's not easy to find a job in my country, so I must resist. So again, make sure your children are always with you. Do not leave them alone. We keep saying this to people, but a lot will listen, so we often find ourselves searching for their children without finding anything most of the time. And when sometimes we do find them, it's already too late. They're dead. It breaks my heart to know how many poor children's faces meet terrible ends here, but I have to pretend that I don't care, you know? I know it sounds heartless, but trust me, I've seen things that will stick forever in my mind, so it's best that I just cope with it this way and avoid thinking too much about it. I took part in a lot of search and rescue operations, so I have some experience. Especially when it comes to finding dead bodies and stuff like that. I guess I'm going to share another rule. 6. Always stay close to your children. If you happen to spot a small pale boy dressed with a blue sweater and barefoot, do not let your kids get close to him. It seems like the things that inhabit this park particularly enjoy to hurt children for some reason. This special visitor, though, preys on kids only, which simply makes it more dangerous in my opinion. It shows itself with the appearance of a small, pale, fragile 8-year-old boy, and this allows it to lure them away easier. It has some recognizable features such as brown short hair, a blue sweater, and having no shoes. I've never seen him, to be honest, but once, a guy I was working with, a poor scaredy cat newbie, I'm pretty sure he'll be leaving soon since you need guts for this job, told me that he saw this boy standing there and looking at some children who were running around a pretty popular area, one of the most frequented by the families for taking pictures and such. My colleague thought he was a kid who got lost, so we approached him, but when he turned, he met blank and white, dusty eyes, so we ran away in terror. This special visitor is allegedly the responsible one for many kids' disappearances and presumably their death. It has been going for a long time. Apparently, it's been seen going up to kids, taking their hand and leading them toward the woodland. I remember a case in particular, which still haunts me. Still have nightmares about it too. We had a 7-year-old girl disappearing one afternoon. Her mother said they were at the playground area, yes, we have that too, and that at one point, she lost sight of her because she was sitting on a bench and it was full of children. When she spotted her again, She was walking hand in hand with another kid, a shoeless boy, straight towards the woods. She tried to run and call her name, screaming to come back, but it was like her daughter couldn't hear anything, and then she disappeared among the trees with the other kid. When we went looking for her, we didn't think we would find her still alive, and in fact, we were right. She was found impaled on a long, sharp broken tree trunk, and was next to the waterfall like she fell from the roof and then got impaled. It was such a macabre sight that I had to turn my head. The blood was everywhere and her expression was of pure pain and mixed with fear. Some of us vomited, but how could I blame them? I don't really blame her mother either, because I can only imagine how painful it must be to lose your kid. We just couldn't tell her the hideous truth, so we said there was no trace of her. I felt so bad and so guilty that day that when I went home, I cried. We gave her false hopes, and this was one of the cruelest things you could ever do to a mother. I won't go on talking about this whole thing because it still makes me tear up, so I'll answer to some questions I got in my private messages. The dogs all look alike, and they are all very similar to black giant schnauzers, while the voice can only be heard on that particular path. Sorry for the confusion. Again, we do not specify where phenomena happens to avoid scaring the visitors. Today, by the way, one of my colleagues told me to call him, and so I did. At first, I was surprised about it because it's not like we talk much at work, not even when we happen to work together. His name is David, and he is one of the oldest among our ranks, which equals to a lot of experience in our field. A few hours after I went home, I heard my phone ring and I picked it up. It was him, obviously, and I was anxious to find out what made him call. It's not like I'm bad at my job, but I'm not one in the highest position, you know? So I didn't quite understand where his interest came from. Then he asked me about the blog and my heart jumped. How did he find out? Was I going to be fired? I mean, I still love my job because I like keeping people safe and because I also feel attracted to the unknown, and I didn't want to go apply for anything else. I started blurting out questions, but he managed to calm me down. He told me I wasn't going to lose anything. Instead, David wanted to help me out. He said he could tell me more about the park because he has been participating in a lot of search and rescue operations, and also because, thanks to being a longtime ranger, he has seen so many weird things and some scary things on top of that. When I asked David how he found out about the blog, I was surprised, because he told me he was actually trying to see if someone else had similar experiences, but he said he was glad about me sharing those stories, because people need to know what truly happens in the world and what dangers are actually out there. We talked for a while about the most random stuff, you know, the usual. Then, when we started talking about our jobs again, his tone changed. Listen, I read that you were intrigued by the man with the tan jacket. I know that it may be the one among the special visitors that sparks the more interest. However, you should not think too much about it. You'll end up calling his attention. David said in a yet calm but shaky voice, if that makes sense. At that point, I asked him what he meant, and he just answered with something vague. I know it doesn't look too dangerous, but trust me, it is. The man in the tan jacket knows everything. Just avoid thinking too much about him. Then we ended up discussing about other topics, and after a few, we decided to end the call. He told me before hanging up to be careful, and I promised that I would. What could ever go wrong? I'm just another park ranger. But I swear on God, that while heading towards the window to close it, I caught with my eye some yellow glimpse. I'm sorry I won't be sharing other stuff today, so I truly hope this is enough for now. I'll be back soon. Do not worry. There are still many things you don't know about the park. I'm very tired today, but I still have a bit of strength that I will use to write down another update. I've had a lot of nightmares yesterday, which didn't make my sleep enjoyable, Plus today we had to deal with another missing child, and even though we were lucky enough to find him before it was too late, it has been tiring. We had to run all around to make sure not to lose him or lose track. We found him sitting on the grass in an isolated area crying, and when one of my colleagues asked him what happened, he simply answered, "The man with the long neck wanted me to jump off the cliff to play, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to play. He got very angry and yelled loudly." That truly disturbed me, because I knew exactly who he was talking about. Here, let me share our next rule. 7. If your kids start seeing a man with a long neck, you get out of the park immediately. Do not leave your child alone. This is another special visitor that seems to prey on children only, and weirdly enough, only those can see it. We believe it's one of the main responsibilities for children deaths here, and those we rescue from it claim it wanted to play. We don't know much about it, but we know from what those kids have told us that it is taller than an average human. It has an extremely long neck that is always smiling with its mouth. If this story makes any sense, honestly, it's really hard to follow. Now, it's already scary working here, but knowing there's a special visitor that you can't see is another story. You become paranoid, always looking around when you hear any little noise. But what could be even worse than a visitor you can't see, you may ask? Well, 2 visitors that you can't see apparently. Yes, you heard right. It is not the only invisible here. So, here comes rule number 8. 8. Do not stay in the park after closing time. If you do, or you remain stuck for some reason, hide immediately. Do not come out from your hiding spot until daylight, when you will be able to ask for help, and do not make any noise. Sounds bad, doesn't it? Well, you wouldn't be wrong actually. It is by far the worst scenario you can find yourself in. It happened once in the park. A very unlucky guy got lost because he took a wrong trail, and as a result didn't make it to the exit of the park at closing time. We don't know how he survived that night, but I think that if God exists for real, he may have helped him. After realizing he was stuck, he told us he tried searching for somewhere to pass the night, so he entered the toilets, the only place we never lock, and while hiding he heard some unusual sounding footsteps coming from just outside. He went out, thinking it may have been someone of the staff, but he didn't see a soul, and yet the sound was still near and hearable. But when he tried to ask if someone was there, he heard it coming closer and louder. He got creeped out, so he went back in the shack, locking himself in one of the toilets and waiting for the sun to rise. We found him trembling. I still remember his pale face and his shaking voice. He continued repeating, like in a loop, "It was there, but it wasn't there. It was there, but it wasn't there." Also, someone shared an interesting theory about why they hadn't closed the park yet. What if somehow it acts as a way to prevent the things inside from getting out? I actually believe this is a pretty good one, though I'm not sure, obviously. The high ranks do not share information easily, and it's already crazy that no one has caught me here. One of my colleagues commented on my recent blog. I could ask Kate, the owner, about some special visitors too, but again, I don't really want to risk my job or something like that, or even have to close down this blog, which is my only way of coping with all of this nonsense, honestly. You guys and your support means a lot to me. It makes my job a little easier and less stressful. Also, my dear colleague, please make sure not to use your real name for privacy reasons and be careful not getting caught. I hope I can count on you. I noticed that a lot of you got interested in the man in the tan jacket too, and I promise to tell you more about him if something new happens. I feel particularly generous today, so I will share some more stuff. Rule 9. 9. There is a bridge made of stones that crosses the river. However, you shall not, for any reason, step on it. It's not only a bridge as you may believe. We didn't build it, and it was there even before the park opened. No one knows when or why it was built. We do know, though, that it is not safe. Many people previously reported that their friends or relatives in that very moment stepped on the bridge, and disappeared, like they were never there. Honestly, the bridge is almost alluring. I know it sounds weird, but believe me when I say it's like it's calling you to cross it. It is tempting, and a lot of times I had to fight myself on this urge. I could see the other rangers doing it too. You can't help but think about stepping on it. Of course, we wrote that rule after the many incidents, but there's a question that haunts me. Why haven't we put up any barrier around to increase security level? Why is it still just open? You see, something is wrong here. I would dare to say it's almost like they want people to come here to just enjoy their time and maybe get hurt. I hope you like this update, and I'm sorry if it's shorter than, the previous ones, but I'm too tired and I feel dizzy right now. Stay safe, and make sure to tell me your thoughts and ask questions about the park if you wish to. Before we start, I would like to say that I'm sorry for the misunderstanding in the previous blog. Kate is such a common name, especially where I come from. So again, I'm truly sorry for causing these misunderstandings. Anyway, you, of course, will remember about David and our call. Well, since then, I haven't seen or heard from him, and I'm starting to worry quite a bit, honestly. He has never missed a day of work, and when I asked around, no one has either heard from him or seen from him. When we get sick, we usually call the center to inform of our absence, so it's weird. Especially from him, since he takes his job very seriously. And yes, before you ask, I tried texting him, but I got no response. Still, I hope he's alright, and that nothing too bad happened. Back to the topic of the park. Today I talked with one of my dearest friends, Marianne. She doesn't work as a ranger, but she has seen and experienced some strange stuff here. So I asked her if I could add some of her stories too. I'm glad she granted me the permission. To make everything easier, my memory is not the best. I recorded her testimonies while we were walking, so that I would be able to write everything down. It's not that I don't like coming here, but at the same time, I prefer to avoid making this a habit. There are things that you'll never be able to get off your mind, and it's not healthy to constantly think about them. It's easier to forget, as they say. Well, I came here one day to jog a bit, and as I always do, I was wearing my headphones to make the working out more pleasant. So, I couldn't hear a thing. I like blasting the music as loud as possible. But, at one point, I don't know why, but I started feeling like someone was watching me, and so I took them off. But, not seeing anyone around, I put them back on. I continued on my way, looking back from time to time, just to assure myself that no one was stalking me. But, then, I saw something. In between the trees. It was the silhouette of a deer, but it didn't seem like a normal deer. It was very pale, and it seemed too tall. I didn't want to get closer, so I ran, speeding out of there. I still don't know for sure what I saw that day, but I can tell you, it didn't look like a normal deer. This is the end of her first story. I'll share one more, even though the next one is short. I had to choose between other ones, but I feel like these were the most interesting because we don't have deer as local fauna here, and because the next one is about a topic we'll cover probably later on with this update. The small lake under the waterfall, right? Well, I decided to go there one day because I wanted to take some pictures to add to my photographic album, and so I did. And when I got there, I took some cool pictures, and then I went home. I usually edit the pictures and add more light and fix stuff, and when it came to increase the brightness, I saw something in the water. There were 2 black spots that seemed like eyes. I looked at it over and over again, but I couldn't think of anything else. They were definitely eyes, cruel and soulless. A horrible sense of uncomfortableness rose up in my spine, so I decided it was better to delete them. It's not hard to imagine that I never went back to take pictures at that park. This is why we have a rule for the lake too. Rule 10. There's a small lake under the waterfall. Avoid bathing there or getting too near the water. We don't know what's under the surface, but we prefer to be careful because apparently someone almost lost their leg there. A guy that was around 19 years old came here with a group of friends, but you know how kids are today. They probably challenged each other at doing something stupid or to go against the rules. This is when the guy got near to the lake. He got grabbed by something and screamed in pain, and only with their help was he able to not be dragged under the water. When he pulled up his leg, he almost fainted. It was badly injured, and you could see the flesh torn. It was like something had bitten him. I'm pretty sure he considered himself lucky that day, because otherwise, he would have definitely been the lunch of whatever lives in the depths of that place. Talking about stuff we still don't know much about, there is a certain trail that we absolutely had to block because of how dangerous it is to walk there. We call this place Rockfall Danger. So, it is truly not a problem. But now, before that, it was one of the most risky parts of the park for the visitors. People would report not knowing anymore where they are going, and would seemingly be lost. They wouldn't know what they were doing. Some would even claim feeling like they were being guided towards another path that would usually end up with a cliff. We obviously have a rule for that too, just to remind everyone that it is not a good idea going there. 11. Do not take path north 23 for any reason. If you happen to be nearby, walk away as fast as possible. So you see, it's never safe enough. We try our best. Somehow, someone always seemingly gets hurt. Someone always dies or goes missing. It's how it's always been and how it will always be, even if we do not like it. I'm tired of worrying so much, to be honest. I'm tired. But what should I do? Give up helping people? It's not easy. You see, you guys are the only ones who I can talk to about this, because my parents and my real-life friends simply wouldn't understand. Or maybe they just don't want to. Maybe they don't want to imagine the possibility of unnatural things existing in our very world. And maybe that's fine. Maybe I'm okay with that. I guess I get it. Life is already hard enough, so obviously there's no need to drag them into more stuff. Getting back into our conversation once again, I would like to share with you something I saw with my own eyes during a search and rescue operation. A woman disappeared during lunchtime. The husband said that she had went to the toilet, but after a while, he started worrying because she hadn't come back yet, and when he went checking with their kids, she wasn't there. After that, he proceeded calling us because he had nowhere to look, and he had to look after his daughters. He couldn't just go searching with them. We found her the day after, her corpse scattered between some bushes and missing both arms. The eyes open in a state of shock, probably because of what she saw before dying. I said scattered because there were pieces of her flesh all around, a bloody mess. No one vomited because you need a strong stomach for this job position, so we get used to it. However, when it came to tell the man we didn't find anything, it broke my heart because I saw him almost crying, which made me kind of uncomfortable because, well, you must admit, you would never imagine seeing a grown man crying. God only knows what he could have been thinking back then. Maybe he thought his wife ran away, or maybe she was abducted or something. God knows what he was thinking. What I do know, though, is that this is cruel. It's cruel to lie to those poor people about their relatives or friends. But for some reason, to the higher ranks in the police, lying about deaths, even if they are terrible, seems better than leaving people tormenting and doubting themselves and obsessing over what they could or could not have done. I don't get it. Sometimes it's better. It's a harsh truth more than a lie. Well, this was not even the first time someone died in that way here, though. There were other similar deaths before and after, but we still don't know what kind of special visitor could have done it, even though a reddish feminine creature without arms has been sometimes spotted by some rangers. Usually they spot this unusual visitor around lunchtime. I believe you know what I mean, but that's just a theory. We don't even have a rule for that because of how unsure we are about that situation. To stay in the topic of special visitors, I think you might be interested in hearing the next rule we have. 12. Every day, in the afternoon, there's an old woman sitting on a bench that feeds the birds. Do not sit with her or talk to her. If she asks you a question, pretend you have to make a call or you are listening to music. And most importantly, do not scare the birds away. The special visitor looks like a harmless woman, but is not. An ex-park ranger was taken by curiosity and decided to try talking to her. Very, very bad move. The thing opened its mouth and a huge tongue came out from it, revealing very long and sharp teeth. How he survived? Another colleague that was patrolling nearby was courageous enough to start throwing things at this, whatever this thing was. He got a heavy rock, and eventually it made it run away. It ran into the woodland, apparently, never to be seen again. Needless to say, that is how the first man became an ex-ranger. I told you, you must have guts to work here, but more than anything, brain. He was just lucky. About the birds as well. They are normal birds, but it seems like they are somehow controlled by that creature. A little bully once tried scaring them away, and the creature decided to make them chase after him. So yeah, I guess that's how we know it. Also, I got some news in regards to search and rescue operations. We find people usually dead, and we either find them in a few hours or days or sometimes even a few weeks. The park is not so big, such as other parks, but it's still big enough to cause troubles during those operations. When we don't find them dead, they're often very badly hurt or in a state of shock and visible confusion, while in the opposite case, deaths never seem incidental. Someone asked me why I chose my job, and again, the main reason is that I want to save people. I would have liked some other security jobs too, maybe like a bodyguard, but I'm just too tiny and I'm not strong enough anymore due to medical conditions. So I opted for a park ranger. I used to like nature, but now it just makes me uncomfortable. Because of the things that I now know are lurking out there, I think that's all I'm going to share for today. I'll ask around for more stories to tell you. Try carrying with me, as someone suggested, some salt. I heard evil beings don't like it, and you're probably right. It could work. So thank you for comprehending, and sorry again for any misunderstandings. Stay safe. I need to give a sense to things that occurred yesterday. I don't know how to feel right now. David's sister went to his apartment just to check in on him, and she found him, dead. He was on the floor, eyes wide open in shock and blood splattered everywhere. The point is, from what I heard, that he had bled to death for no apparent reason. There were no cuts, nothing, and that his expression was of pure fear, like he had saw something so terrifying that made him fall onto the ground. David didn't have any health issues, so if you recall my past post, well, you probably don't know what it means. You probably know who, or should I say what, did this to him. In fact, I've met it, as if nothing more could go wrong. I was doing my job, patrolling another isolated trail and trying to get over David's death, when suddenly I felt a hand on my shoulder. So naturally, I turned in concern, only to meet face to face with the man in the tan jacket. I couldn't see obviously under his scarf, but I swear that somehow I knew he was smiling. I know I said I wouldn't go patrolling alone anymore, but sometimes we need time alone. Sometimes we are just too tired or nervous to have anyone around, so they'll allow it still. They give us walkie-talkies though. Again, we are human, so it can happen that we go alone, even though it is not suggested. It's not that things are less dangerous when in couples, though, because bad stuff can happen anyway. It simply kinda helps. I mean, groups are good, because it is very rare that stuff happens in those cases yet. But it's not impossible. I'm sorry, my dear. I didn't mean to frighten you. Have we met before? You do look familiar, he said in a surprisingly cheerful and warm voice. I expected it to be creepy, but it wasn't. Yet, I had the feeling that there was something odd. You know, when something just doesn't feel right. He then took my hand and kissed it, like a gentleman would do. I stared at him blankly, not processing yet what was happening. One thing is hearing about the special visitors or spotting them. Another thing is having face-to-face encounters. Would you like to sit, perhaps? You walked quite a lot, I assume. He asked me, gesturing towards one of the brick walls. Yes, thank you, I answered, confused. What did he mean? I had never seen him. Unless... That evening, when David called me, I saw a yellowish glimpse outside the window. And I saw those often this past few days, but really didn't pay attention to it. I thought it was temporary, like caused by me just being very tired, but I guess I was wrong. I then looked at the spot and went sitting with him. Was he trying to mock me? I'm pretty sure he was, because he didn't think I would have come to this conclusion so quickly, but I said nothing. He asked for my name, and as you imagine, I lied. We then carried on a conversation about the beauty of nature, my studies, and such. But even though it didn't seem too bad talking with him, deep down, I knew something was very wrong. Maybe he was trying to make me let my guard down. Who knows? Luckily, I'm not that type of person you can trick easily, and I'm very good at reading people too. I believe he, or it, acts like psychopaths would do, creating a false image of kindness and reliability to gain your trust while preparing to stab you. I have no idea for how long we talked. It was probably roughly an hour or so, but when the time came for me to go, I was asked one last question. Before you go, dear, tell me, what is it you seek? What do you truly desire? I stared at his sunglasses. No, you couldn't make out any features of his face apart from the ears. And though I thought about it for a moment, I was pondering the possibilities. What I answered was, I don't know. And he just looked at me, like you would do if somebody said something weird, but it was the truth. I don't know what I want. I'm always confused, so there's no real answer to that. The man in the tan jacket let me go and waved at me. See you soon, dear. Next time, I'm sure you will. So that was my encounter with him, and I honestly believe it won't be the last. Now, let's just change the subject. I think you might like some of the stories some of my colleagues sent me by message, so that I could easily share them with you. The first story was submitted by Ashley. It happened a few years ago. Me and a team of colleagues were taking part in a search and rescue operation. 2 college students had apparently gone missing, so we had to check various places. But after a while, we ran out of options, so we had to go for the woodland. I don't know for how much time we had been walking, but at one point, it appeared in front of us like magic. A small wooden cabin. It didn't quite make any sense. Why would there be a cabin here, in the middle of a forest? We looked at each other. Should we go check? One of them asked in a nervous voice. We had already seen and experienced weird stuff in the park, so the idea of going inside really didn't spark our joy. I nodded along with some other rangers and started walking towards the shed. That poor guy decided to go first, and another one followed him behind while we waited outside for them. We waited only a few minutes, however, because they both bolted out panicking and screaming. The long woman with her big eye was looking at us from the ceiling. That said, They were both left traumatized for life, taken to a mental institute because they continued babbling nonsense about the long woman. We never found the two teens. We made up a new rule, of course, but we couldn't destroy or close the cabin because every time we tried, it would disappear and reappear in another location. So, my suggestion is, if you find it, stay the hell away from it. That's the end of our first story that honestly still gives me chills, and here's the related rule. 13. If you find a wooden cabin, absolutely do not enter, and make sure to call the security immediately. Well, I believe there's no need for further explanations. While we are here, let's get to another rule, then to another story. 14. If you happen to see a blonde woman with a blue dress, do not look at her directly in the eyes, and please do not follow her. This story was sent to me by a guy we'll call Ed. I've seen so much crap here before, but this seriously made me question many times if I should quit my job. One day I was checking on one of the main trails when a woman came out of the bushes. She stood in front of me. She was gorgeous in her blue dress, blonde hair, slim, with pale skin and blue eyes. But those eyes, God, they were a deep blue, so deep and mesmerizing that I could get lost. However, she didn't say anything and simply offered me a hand. I didn't want to go with her, but I found myself walking in that direction. No matter how hard I tried to resist, my legs seemed to move on their own. I took her hand and she started leading me onto another trail, one that I had never taken before. I tried yelling, but my voice wouldn't come out, and the more we walked, the more I felt lost and cold. Where was I? Who was I? Those were the questions that kept running through my head. You know how I got out of the situation? My phone thankfully rang in that moment, just right when I almost got to the point of giving up. This somehow broke the trance, and I regained all of my consciousness and ran away from whatever that thing was, back to the main path. Sometimes, though, I still hear just in the back of my mind the echo of a female voice. As mentioned various times, I haven't encountered all of the special visitors, so in that case, I'll just be sharing the rules. I think anyways that today I'll end here. This entry is a little shorter than others and I do apologize. I just need some time to get over David's death and process what happened. I think now I know why David warned me. Curiosity killed the cat. Hi guys, welcome to a new update, and thank you so much for your kindness. I won't write much because my head hurts a lot. I hit it today while entering my car on my way to work. Plus, I'm feeling extremely depressed at the moment. Anyways, today I decided I'll share some stories from David in his memory. I truly hope you can enjoy them. I'm still amazed by all the positive response by my blogs. You probably already know that I took part in many search and rescue operations. So I think I will start from one of the events that haunted me the most during my whole career. I've also been working in other parks, but none of them was like this one. We were in big squash because apparently a kid had disappeared while he was walking on a trail with his family, composed by his older brother of 17 and their parents. When we arrived, we found the brother shaking and crying, and the mother was absolutely distraught. She was crying desperately that she was holding on to the child's hand the whole time, but when she turned towards him, at one point, he had just disappeared. One of us told her she probably got distracted, but what hit me is that she insisted until she managed to convince my boss in something. Her eyes told me it was true. I was assigned to a squad of 4 people, one of them being my old buddy Matt. I, being the oldest person, said I wanted to go ahead of the group, and so I did. The forest was, for some strange reason, quiet. There were no chirping of birds, no howling of the wind between the dead autumn leaves, nothing. We carefully continued walking, trying to see if we could find some traces or hear something that could possibly lead us to the kid. And it went on like this for what I think was a half an hour. But then, we heard it. A whistle. Clear and loud. It seemed to be coming from all directions. We looked at each other in possible visible confusion, because we couldn't make out the source of the sound. One of us spoke up, saying we couldn't stop, so we agreed and continued our search, even if we were scared. But the further we went, the louder this noise got, until we had to turn back eventually. It was simply impossible to work in this condition. There was nothing else we could do, but in the end, we found him. This boy was extremely lucky. One of the other squads found him near a clearing. The kid looked very confused, and it almost seemed like he didn't know where he was or where he was going. Some other colleagues asked him a few questions, and since curiosity always has the best out of me, I listened in disbelief. I was with Mom the entire time. Why did you take me away? So yeah, that wasn't the only time I witnessed stuff like that. Another case that I particularly remember was when me and my dear friend and colleague Matt were patrolling at one of the signal towers. Now, this is a position you get to occupy once in a while, because it's very easy to mess up. But I should have felt lucky, but I really didn't. The thought of being at such a height made me feel nervous. I know it sounds weird from someone like me, but everyone has their own phobias, and mine has always been heights. I accept it only because I didn't want to look like a little girl. You know, as a grown man, I would have felt very embarrassed otherwise. Our society puts us in a position that doesn't allow you to show too many feelings or to show your weakness. Me and Matt went upstairs, and I did my best to try not to look down. When we arrived, we decided to go checking on the north. It all seemed good at first. Eventually, he decided that I should go check the south and the east, and he would go and check more of the north and the west. We went back and forth on the balcony, but didn't see anything unusual going on, so after a few, I decided I would go pee. The toilets were downstairs, so I had to once again gather all my courage because I simply could not hold it anymore. When I was about to go do my business, I heard a noise that sounded like footsteps, so I quickly turned around, but no one was there. I looked up and I could still see Matt at the top of the tower, so it couldn't be him. And no, it wasn't just me being paranoid. I knew I heard footsteps. "Whoever is here, come out. It's not funny. Stop screwing around," I shouted. But without receiving any answer, I shrugged and went into the toilets. When I finished and got out, I saw Matt waving frantically at me and shouting my name, so I went upstairs as fast as I could, only to find him with his face pale as paper. "What is it? What happened?" I asked, worried. He looked at me straight in the eyes, an expression between fear and confusion, and then stammered some words out. Someone tried to push me down, but there was no one behind me when I turned around. I heard them go away, though." We checked inside the tower and all around, but didn't find anything suspicious or signs of human activity. This was the last time I went to that location in the park. I'm telling you, this park is the devil's home. I am very tired today, so I'll just share something that happened today while I was working. But first, another rule to get to the point of the situation. 15. You may start feeling at one point like entering the forest. Do not listen to that impulse and immediately run back to the main path. I was patrolling with another ranger that we'll call Trisha. We don't know each other well enough to make deep talk, so after a few, there was an awkward silence we couldn't fill anymore. I'm just not made for small talks, you know? The tree line of the woodland was beside us, and suddenly I felt the urge of running straight towards it. But I don't know why. I don't think I was myself, or at least that I was lucid. Trisha noticed me staring at the trees and shook me, so finally the urge stopped. I thanked her and we started chatting again, this time a bit louder. Though when I looked again at the woods, just out of plain morbid curiosity, I saw 2 red orbs that resembled eyes. I'll end it here for today, guys, But before we truly finish with this entry, I would like to add that today, I saw the man in the tan jacket again. This time, however, he did not bother me for another conversation. Instead, he just tipped his hat at me. I smiled and quickly went to the opposite direction, until his figure faded, such as my smile. Stay safe out there, and take care of yourself. Remember not to lose your sanity. Mental health is important too. In the last 2 days, I've seen some people saying a few things regarding my blogs that I would like to discuss. Someone mentioned how selfish I am for keeping this job while not caring enough about safety and searching for something else instead. I don't know how many times I'll have to explain it, but I can't do otherwise. My country has a high percentage of disoccupation, which often means it's not easy to find a job here, especially something that's not underpaid. I do have bills and other stuff to care for. It's not as easy as it seems. I also recently got diagnosed with more health issues, so I need to pay medications and doctors. Second thing, someone else wondered why we don't close either, because of the Screaming Man. The problem is, Rangers don't make the rules here, we just try to follow them, so there's pretty much nothing we can do about it. We do care about people's safety, but it's not our fault that the high ranks think that this place needs to be open. Now, I do have an interesting story from another one of my colleagues that will call Samantha. She said she wanted to help somehow, because people need to know what's actually going on. I never thought something like this could happen, but it did happen for real, and yet, I'm still trying to convince myself it was only a dream. That's what this place does to your mind. Anyway, I was walking past the entrance early one morning, so no one was there yet except for me. I sat down on a small wall waiting for other staff members to arrive, but something started bothering me at one point. You know when you simply don't feel alone, like someone's watching you? I started turning around in all directions, searching for someone or something, but the more I did, the more I became paranoid and agitated. At one point though, I realized where I haven't looked yet. Above me. I took a deep breath. When I looked up, I froze. I just couldn't move. There was a pair of big, red, bloodshot eyes floating in the freaking air. They were attached to nothing. How was that even possible? Now, you may think of me as a chicken, but what truly bothered me wasn't the fact that there were eyeballs and, well, it was gory. No. What disturbed me for real was how they looked at me. I swear I felt whoever owned those eyeballs wanted to hurt me. When adrenaline kicked in, I ran away as fast as I could, locked myself into my car, and decided it was enough for the day. And I went home. I told everyone I was sick. Well, actually, this is not the only case in which someone had claimed of seeing those floating eyes, but I don't think I'm going to ask around about them. I mean, they are just eyes in the end, and there's way more weirder and scarier stuff going on at the park, like talking about creepier stuff that we can't explain. There is one rule we all remember pretty well. 16. Beware of the footprints. If you see human bare feet prints, make sure to get away as quickly as possible. It may happen for us or for the visitors to find strange bare feet footprints. Sometimes they are way too distant from each other to be left by a regular human being. I would dare say that only something with very, very long legs could have left those, which is obviously not an animal, right? They are not a problem itself, but when they appear, someone else goes missing. And it's usually children, so this is why we ask to be informed immediately. We'll just get ready because we know it will happen eventually. If it happens that we find a missing person in these cases, we usually find them dead and placed in what probably wants to resemble a grave, digged in the soil, with what also is probably rudimental tools. It's honestly chilling because it almost seems to mock our costumes, and it's scary that something not human may know us like this. The corpses don't show any wounds or other signs of violence, but there are always missing livers, and to be honest, I don't want to know how that's even real. I'm too curious, but I learned by long time experience, and sometimes it's just better not to ask too many questions. I wish I could talk to my mother about what bothers me, but she has already too many things to worry about, and I don't like to be a burden. She has serious health problems too, so I think you can understand. However, it happened once that somehow we found ourselves talking about my experiences with the paranormal and my little obsession over this stuff. I just can't help it. Dark things just get my attention. It doesn't matter how scary they may be. Plus, it seems like I also attract them too. A lot. I don't recall if I've mentioned it before already, but I have some unnatural stuff going on in my home as well. And it's stuff that you can't obviously hide anymore at one point, so my mother knows about it. After I tried changing the subject, she held my hand, looked at me directly in the eyes, and said I should try praying. A few of you guys suggested that I do that as well, but I kinda find it pointless since I lost my faith in God long ago. I can't ask for help from something that I don't trust. Talking about religion, the next rule has something to do with it. 17. You may happen to encounter a nun, dressed in a white habit. She'll be holding a rosary and chanting in a weird language, so make sure to not disturb her and continue on your way. She's another special visitor, and many rangers encountered, and none of them were able to recognize the language as human, so what we can assume is that she's not. And now comes, obviously, a very important question. How do we know we shouldn't bother this visitor? It was told to us by another old ex-recruit during our first week of work at the park, but I waited for the right moment to share this little story. He said he tried talking with her because he didn't really pay attention to the language, believing it may have been Latin or something else, and so being tricked into thinking she was a normal person. When she turned though, he couldn't see her eyes because she had none. Instead, she opened her mouth, so much it could have been capable of swallowing a cat. The mouth was full of long, sharp teeth, and she started screaming so loud, he said that he was scared of going deaf. After that, the visitor left, leaving him bleeding from his ears down on his knees. After that, we all made sure not to interrupt whatever that nun was doing. Also, I would like to once again remind you that English is not my first language, so I apologize in advance for any mistakes. I do try my best. I'm also very glad many people like reading my blogs. It truly means a lot to me, because it's like someone is listening to me. It feels just so good to know somebody's truly interested in what I have to say. I will never stop thanking you enough for the support. I find myself on a daily basis surrounded by people that don't actually pay little attention to what I have to say, and it's frustrating. Because I want to trust them, but I start doubting them. It doesn't matter how nice they are. I sometimes doubt my own mental sanity too, because I start obsessing over things, overthinking everything, and it's just awful. By the way, I saw him again. He's acting weirder because he's not trying to engage me in conversations anymore. I decided to go up to him when I saw him. He was sitting on a brick wall, like waiting for something. "Hello," I said, trying to look as confident as possible. I was sweating though. "Hello, my dear. I hope you're doing good. I won't bother you today with another one of my silly conversations, so I hope you can have a nice day," he replied, with nonchalance, and I felt like there was a bit of pride in his tone. Just like a kid would do after having done a big prank. It didn't look good to me, at all. I suspiciously raised an eyebrow and thanked him and then laughed. I'm sure he knows something that I don't. I remember David telling me the man in the tan jacket knew everything. But what does everything mean exactly? Maybe he's planning on doing something. But why would he then be waiting in silence? I'm definitely not the one to stop him, I hope. If you should have some ideas, please comment them. I would love to know. Before I end this entry, I wanted to announce that we are going to have special training on Wednesday. We do those from time to time, so I may not be able to upload anything on that day. See you guys tomorrow, and thanks for your patience. haven't felt really good recently, so I apologize in advance if you find mistakes in this entry. I'm truly exhausted from work. I'm not sick, but I feel like I need to rest. Today, I'll have the special training in the afternoon, so I hope I'll be able to tell you something new. Maybe I could ask my colleagues about their experiences. We had another search and rescue operation yesterday, but something concerning happened, even though, well, it won't sound like something too new to you at this point, I suppose. Sorry for uploading just now. Yesterday's entry, I was very busy. Now, we were walking through one of the paths in the woods, searching for a 10-year-old girl that the mother had lost sight of. But we were so concentrated on looking for tracks that we didn't pay too much attention to each other, apart from necessary stuff. The first 24 hours are of extreme importance, so we can't waste time talking and such. At one point I noticed that my shoelaces were untied, so I got down on my knee to fix them quickly. Even though everyone else was way ahead of me, they probably didn't even notice me being left behind in such a hurry. But I didn't want to trip and get hurt in all honesty. When I turned to my left, however, I realized I had never seen the guy that was standing right beside me. To be fair, I had never seen him either, coming with us or working at the park. Plus, we have a staff meeting once a month, so it's not too hard to remember my colleagues' faces. I looked at him, rather puzzled. I didn't even remember someone being behind me. Plus, he was strange. He was wearing our uniform, but it was ruined. And when I say ruined, I mean like dirty and ripped up. Like he had been fighting a wild monster or something. He also had light brown hair, covered by our typical hat, and he looked quite pale. When I asked him who he was and what had happened to his clothes, he seemed calm. Too calm, actually. I was asked about you by the boss. She wants to see you. I fell a few times and I got some scratches because I was in a hurry. Please follow me, he said then, looking straight into my eyes. This confused me a lot. Why were they asking for me? They know exactly what I'm doing. I'm in the middle of a mission. Why would I be searched for? I don't understand. It didn't make any sense. I'm sorry. I can't. We're in the middle of a mission. Plus, doesn't she have like a walkie-talkie? I asked, more confused than ever because we all have one. She could have just simply called me. There was no reason she would send someone else. The guy said her walkie-talkie was broken and asked again for me to follow him. But the thought of her calling me during a mission, knowing how strict she is, made me question his words once again. Couldn't she simply just take another one at the base? I looked at him. He was waiting for an answer. His eyes fixated on me, and it made me extremely nervous. Then, I heard someone calling me, and I turned back. It was one from the squad, Neil, and he was panting from running so quickly towards me. "Why are you not following us anymore? Are you alright?" he asked, in a concerned tone. Yes, this guy," I was about to say, but the weird ranger wasn't there anymore. I got back to our squad, and luckily we managed to find the girl before something terrible could have happened. But I swear, I didn't hear him go away. When I talked with Kate about this, she turned pale as paper, and so did the other rangers from my squad. She never asked me to come talk with her. This wasn't, nonetheless, the only chilling thing that happened yesterday, so let me share with you another rule. 18. You may encounter a figure dressed in all black robes. You won't be able to see its face. They will ask you if you lost something. Absolutely do not answer yes. Answer no, thank them, and continue on your way. This special visitor isn't one of the creepiest when it comes to appearance, but rather when it comes to making you feel downright uncomfortable. I was going back to the parking lot when suddenly I heard a voice coming from behind me.
Did you lose something?
It was deep and sounded quite old. I turned and saw, I believe it was a man. It was dressed in all black, in a huge, hooded robe. I tried making out their face, but it seemed like the shadows under the hood were too deep to do so. I kind of froze, but I managed to recollect myself. I said no, thanked them, and ran towards my destination. After that, I was going to go home, but when I was about to enter my car, I saw it. A yellowish glimpse. There he was, leaning against one of the gates. He tipped his hat and gestured for me to come closer. I started walking towards him, but I was anxious. What did he want from me this time? I couldn't have done otherwise. If I'd ignore him, he would have gotten mad at me and probably killed me. I would suggest you pay attention tomorrow, he said, hands placed in his jacket pockets. What do you mean? You know, he said, remaining perfectly still. Tomorrow, you are going to have a training, right? I was speechless. He truly knew everything. As David warned me, but how? What the heck was this thing? Yeah, and so, should I pay attention to that, or what should I pay attention to? I asked, waiting for some answers. 1,000 questions were running through my head. He seemed to find something funny in my question, because he giggled. Well, you'll see by yourself. He then vanished in front of my eyes like he was never there. I don't know what he meant, but I'm scared something terrible will happen, and I'm seriously starting to question once again if I should even be keeping this job. Should I truly risk everything, or should I just leave? I don't know if I'll be able to pay my medical bills and other stuff. I'll have to think about it carefully. I feel like I'm going crazy. I would like to give a sense of what happened yesterday, but I can't. For this training, they had prepared us for an obstacle course at the base to see how fast we could go and how long our endurance was. This was supposed to help us in search and rescue missions, of course, to help us increase our strength and endurance. When my turn came, I gathered all my breath and speeded like there was no tomorrow until the end of the obstacle course, doing my absolute best, imagining there was someone else's life at risk. When I finished, I went down on my knees, panting. I had breathing issues, so this was a lot for me to take, but still, I just couldn't fail. I have high expectations for myself, and if I always give out the best I can, then maybe I'll, get something good in return. I started feeling a bit dizzy, and I started having nausea. So I tried to stand up and go back to the base or see if there was someone else around who I could ask for help from. But I was alone. I walked for a few meters, repeating to myself that I could do it, and when my vision became fuzzy, after a few minutes, everything went black, and the last thing I can remember is that feeling of falling. I don't know how it happened. I swear I have no idea, but when I woke up, I was in the forest, laying on the ground. I don't know where I was exactly, because it's hard to tell unless you follow one of the paths, so I was basically lost. Then I looked up at the sky, however, and realized it was dark. I started panicking. One thing is getting lost during the daytime, but getting lost at night is terrible. One of those situations you would never want to wish yourself in, ever. Unfortunately though, I was stuck in it. I massaged my head. It kinda hurt. I brought my hand where my walkie-talkie was supposed to be. I said supposed to be because it was gone. I then took my phone, but there was no connection. There was basically no way I could ask for help. I was stuck there. I decided staying there was the best option. Many people don't know that it is important when getting lost is to not move. This is why we often don't find them in time. Only problem is, something else other than my colleagues could have found me in that case. This is why I decided to try to not to make any sound and to not use my torch on my phone. If something else was there, I definitely didn't want it to see me. I simply moved under a tree and sat there. I was freezing and I was honestly afraid that I could die from hypothermia. My country has been affected a lot by low temperatures lately, and I can't stand the cold. I don't know how many times it passed, but at one point, I heard some brush rustling. I held my breath, as I thought I wasn't alone anymore, but I couldn't see a dang thing out there, and there was no moon. I hoped with all myself that whatever it was, it couldn't see me. After a while, though, I was glad it was dark. The man in the tan jacket was right. I shouldn't have come to training. And yet, I still have no idea why he warned me. Isn't the purpose of most special visitors to hurt us? If so, why warn me then? Especially when he already knew what was going to happen. I decided I was going to ask him next time I spot him, but I don't guarantee he'll give me a proper answer. Most likely something cryptic as usual. Going back to what happened, I probably fell asleep because I was too exhausted to continue staying awake. They found me this morning. The first to help me was Trisha, and trust me, if I tell you what, I've never been so happy to see someone. I even hugged her from being so relieved. They took me to the base and I talked to her and Kate. A few other higher ranked rangers asked me what happened and I told them all the details I could remember, but not the one about the man in the tan jacket. I felt like I couldn't trust them enough, you know? After all, how could you trust someone that keeps in an open place like this? I know, I may sound like a hypocrite because I still work here, but what can I do? I already told you my situation. It's hard. You know what? Maybe I should ask the man one more question. Also, after that, Trisha invited me over to a party on Saturday. I'll gladly accept, because we are starting to get along, and if I can, I'm always up to make some new friends. I'm a chatty person, and even though staying with people drains a lot of my energy, I like it. I really hate being alone. Before I end this entry, I would like to make some considerations. Now, a few of you asked why we don't carry guns. This is because our country doesn't allow it in our job. Another frequent question I get is why we don't just tell newspapers and the media about this whole thing so the park can close. First of all, it's hard to convince people that this is even real. It's hard to take pictures as evidence, and it's also truly hard to record videos. The special visitors are not stupid and won't come out if we have cameras or anything like that. Second thing, most of us have families, and as I've stated many times, we live in a country where most jobs aren't paid very well. So we're pretty much stuck here because this is one of the few good paying jobs. I'm very sorry if my latest blogs have been shorter. I'm just so tired. I don't even have the energy to get out of bed. I'm forcing myself to get up because I need to go to work. Otherwise I would be laying in bed doing absolutely nothing. I'm still not feeling really good, but I don't want you guys to be too concerned about it. I don't like throwing my problems at other people. I think I may have caught some fever, but I went to work anyways because I needed a bit of fresh air to clear my thoughts. I'm getting more confused each day. Me and Trisha got paired together again yesterday. Sorry for not updating earlier, but internet wasn't working. This time though, we talked a lot and I was surprised, because I didn't expect us to have so much in common. Did I just make a new friend? I hope so. She seems like a very nice person. Anyways, at one point we started talking about what happens in the park, and she told me a story that I believe you'll find pretty interesting. I asked her if I could record it for my blog. I know whether I can trust someone or not. It's like this feeling I have in my gut. I just know it. Again, I didn't tell too many of my colleagues about it because it would probably be risky. Plus, I'm afraid if some bigger people are involved in this. I don't know why the park is still open, but I have the feeling there must be other reasons behind it, apart from the money, of course. When Trisha started narrating what happened, she seemed nervous. There's something sinister about our signal tower. Like, you feel very bad when you go there. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not good at putting words together, but I can swear on God that it's not a normal place. Electronics go nuts there and you always feel like you're not welcomed. You hear weird noises a lot. Look, I know I probably sound like a lunatic right now, but there are some of us that were assigned to patrol there, and most of them claim that they had heard some footsteps, even though they were alone. I have no idea if it was told to you already, but sometime around a year ago, a guy was found dead up there. He fell from the tower's balcony and broke his neck when his body touched the ground, dying on the impact, obviously, but it didn't look like an accident. He was a very trained recruit, so it was absurd to think that he just fell off. I don't know, and I don't have any other info in regarding to that situation, but still, after knowing about this, I started avoiding that damn place. I refuse to go near it too. It's probably the part of the park that I hate the most, even though it's probably the most pretty part. I felt my throat going dry, because David told me something similar, if you recall my previous post. We then changed the subject again because I saw her getting nervous, and I didn't want her to feel sad because of me. After a while, I started feeling nervous for whatever reason, and when I turned, I saw him. He was standing there leaning with his back on a tree, arms crossed, his sunglasses always hiding his eyes. He waved at me, and so did I. Then asked Trisha if we could walk a bit faster. I didn't want him to bother me anymore. He truly is starting to get on my nerves more than anything. It almost seems like he finds it funny to scare me, like it's some sort of sick game. To be honest with you guys, I don't know how many more entries I'll write. I'm starting to hate this place for real, and there's a possibility I will leave, but I'm not sure yet. So I'll share the last one of our typical special regulations. 19. If you suddenly start hearing a sound of static, immediately cover your ears. This happened a few years back. When I was still new to the job, I was paired with a guy named Luke, and we were asked to patrol an area by a trail. We reluctantly accepted. That freaking spot is very well known for the stuff I told you already, and so we avoided it at all cost. There was also a lot of embarrassing silence because he seemed to be more like the silent type of guy, I guess, so I really didn't want him to be forced into some random, probably boring conversation. At one point though, the silence was filled with a static noise in the air. It got louder and louder. I covered my ears almost immediately, but Luke didn't and started screaming. He would twist in pain and shake, screaming so much it seemed like he could lose his voice. I called for help at the base, and after a while they took him to the hospital because his ears were bleeding and his pressure was high. What haunted me though were the words he started repeating over and over again. The void wants to be filled. Another strange episode I can remember was when once during a squad patrol, we were probably about 5 rangers deep, we saw something bizarre among the trees. It was tall like an average human being, but it was pale, and the arms were extraordinarily long, with what seemed like sharp claws at the end of each finger. I squeezed my eyes, trying to define the head, but I believe I could have been wrong because what I saw was another big, deformed hand full of claws. I forgot my glasses at home that day, so I could surely be wrong. You know, sometimes you just see things that are not there. It's something that happens a lot, actually more than we can imagine. To give you another example, there was this one time where I was going to have a small lunch break, and at one point, I would have swore I saw something moving in the mud, but the twigs and leaves were forming some sort of face. I shrugged it off, because again, it just didn't seem like something that could have been real. Now I guess it's time to answer one of your questions instead. Many people have tried guessing where the park is located, and since I figured out that the first hint I gave wasn't very helpful, I can tell you that we are not located in America. I hope that can help you, just a little bit. I'll end this blog here for today. I'm still in doubt if I should leave or stay. It's not the job that I hate, but rather this stupid place. I may have to ask my parents for a little help for my medical bills then, even if I really don't like that idea. I don't like feeling like a bother or being a bother. Welcome back, guys, to a new update. Honestly, I still kind of feel bad, and I'm starting to worry about my health. If you remember, I mentioned that Trisha and I were going out on Saturday, but for all the time we spent together, she seemed uncomfortable. She wasn't talkative at all, which is pretty weird for her, and I caught her a few times constantly looking around like she was searching for something. I asked her if she was okay, and she said she wasn't really feeling good, but told me not to worry. I tried insisting again, but she said it was nothing, just a bit of a headache and nausea. After that, I didn't insist on the subject. I know this wasn't the reason she was acting that way. I can sense things, so I knew she was lying. After a while, we just went back home and called it a night. What makes me worry though is that she didn't answer my messages yet. I sent her a few in the last 3 days, but she didn't answer, and she wasn't online either. Anyways, there is something I believe is rather important, and I need to tell you exactly what happened today. I went home earlier, but before reaching my car that was in our parking space, I met him. He was sitting on a bench reading a newspaper. It surprised me and caught me off guard. I had never seen him doing such a thing. I stopped in front of him in that very moment. He put the newspaper down and tipped his hat toward me. I know you have questions. I would be glad to answer them, so come sit here, he said, patting the space next to him on the bench. I obliged, confused. He then looked at me and gestured towards the newspaper. Oh, this? Well, I usually read a lot of books, but I get bored easily, so I decided to try something different. I must say that I quite enjoy knowing what happens outside of this place. It's not that I can't leave, but I can't do it for too long, you know? He explained, crossing his legs while doing so. I felt my throat going dry, and then I realized that he has been toying with us the whole time. He could read our minds, yet there was something I didn't understand still. Yes, my dear, I can. And no, I wouldn't call it toying with you. It makes me sound heartless. I'd rather call it testing your intelligence. I just wanted to see how long it would take you to figure this all out, he said, giggling. I didn't laugh. There was nothing funny about it. And allow me to clarify something, by the way. I don't know everything. I am not able to know your real name because names are equal to power, and they are like a secret, something that only their holder is aware of. So I can't know it unless you're willing to share it with me, or I overhear it. And if I don't own that secret, I won't be able to punish you if you lie to me. Still, it doesn't mean I can't keep an eye on you, he added. And then, he did something I would never have expected. He took off his sunglasses. I also realized they weren't for the sun, though I wish I'd never seen what was underneath. He didn't have eyes. His sockets were empty and black, like someone carved the eyeballs out. My stomach was about to turn. He then winked, confirming something that I'd always known deep down inside. It really didn't matter if you lied or not to the last question. He would still follow you if he decided to do so. He couldn't go too far from the park, but why? He then put them back on and placed one of his hands on my shoulder. I frowned. You see, this is my home after all. This is where I belong, and you can't stay too far away from where you belong. Now, isn't that right? I nodded, trying to clear my mind with all the nonsense he was saying. I will jump to what is bothering you now. You see, the park opening there is a huge earning that goes to both the owner and, well, some bigger fellows, we could say. Isn't that how you young people speak nowadays? He giggled again, and then came back being serious, adjusting his hat's brim. Oh, and the police? After all, silence is gold, he finished, waiting for my reaction. I already kinda know this, but I don't believe that's the only reason the park is still being open to the public, I said, firmly. I wanted a real answer, and I wasn't going to back down without it. Let's say that some things have been taken care of, and that is better to just leave unknown. It's easier that way for both of us. I understood what he meant, but why keep it open for visitors? He interrupted my thoughts, getting closer to me. If you intend to grow something, that something must be fed. He finished, standing up, while my heart started racing. The park needed to be open to act as a freaking feeding ground. The visitors, the rangers, maybe even the creatures within, are all meat for whatever is secretly hiding in this park. I felt disgusted. Don't worry, you'll see your friend tomorrow. I'm pretty sure about that. I must go now. Make sure to take care of yourself. He waved. After that, I rushed to the parking lot and got in my car, but I swear that before going, I heard him say something in between the lines of, and make sure to check on your friends. I don't know how to feel right now. On one hand, I feel bad for working there, and on the other hand, I still am in so much doubt if I should leave. Even if I leave, it won't change a thing and I'll be nothing but a bother to my parents. I know, I'm a mess and I can't seem to come to make a choice. Not yet, at least. Like, think about it. All the rangers should leave, not only me, but everybody. But since most have families and bills to pay just like me, they just can't risk it. When I got home, I decided to call Trisha, but she didn't answer. Is she sick? I have no idea. I just hope she's going to be fine. I hope everything else is going to be fine. This place feels like hell on earth now. I can't sleep. No matter how hard I try, I'll get up and start writing this entry that I'll post tomorrow in the afternoon for you guys. I'll have some family business in the morning, so I wouldn't have been able to write before. This, as you may have figured out already, will be the last update. It doesn't mean I won't be back with other stories, just not with this one. I'm done working here. I simply can't stand one more day in this damn place. Not after what happened yesterday, at least. I should have known all along. I should have known. And I blame myself for that, and there was a bigger reason behind this, other than simply creeping me out. He was keeping an eye on me since I started this blog. He was making sure that I would go away from this place, so that I could stop spreading precious information about the outsiders. How do I know that? Yesterday, I went back to work as he promised the day before. I found Trisha. Dead. She hung herself on a tree, just right in front of the main gates. When me and some other colleagues saw it, we immediately called the police and the high ranks. I was so broken that I didn't even cry. You know, when you are just so desperate that tears don't seem to come out. Her expression? Hell, it was a pure terror. It's my fault. It's my fault that 2 people died, and all because of my selfishness. I should have kept my mouth shut. But how? How could I refrain myself from sharing such important things with the outside world? I know I may look childish and even more selfish, but I believe for every minute that this information could be of huge importance in the future to some. And no, Trisha didn't hang herself because she was depressed or else. She seemed too cheerful to do something so horrible. Plus, she didn't have the look of trouble to me. And I myself have serious mental health issues, so why would I have found out if she had them too, more than likely? When you're not healthy, you see that in other people too. Also, suicide is hard to commit. It's not something you can do so easily, and only certain are brave enough to even actually go through with it. Though, I knew who made her do it, and I'm pretty sure you know the answer too. Why I keep saying it's my fault then? It's still my fault because if only I didn't call her by name when he saw us, that wouldn't have happened. I've been stupid. Really stupid. I didn't even think about it, because I'm always calling people by their names during conversations, so I didn't even really notice. This doesn't justify me. I should have been on alert. Damn it. I let my guard down. My stupidity cost another person their life. I've always thought that I was one of the good guys for not being corrupted such as the police and the high ranks, but it turns out that I'm not. I guess I'm not so different from them in the end. After that, I saw the man in the tan jacket again. He was standing in a corner behind one of the trees, watching me, a cold, dead stare without eyes. I then noticed nobody else was there, and nobody else could see him as well. So I approached him. David and Trisha were warning for me to stop doing whatever I was doing, otherwise I would probably be the next one. I was sure of that, yet I still needed answers, so I gathered all my courage and started walking straight towards him, my fist closed. I had to do it. I thought I had to do it for David and Trisha, and for everyone else here. I know what you did. I'm aware you do, my dear, he answered, coming out from his hiding spot. I stopped right in front of him so that we were face to face. I didn't care if he was going to hurt me in that moment. I didn't care about anything. I just wanted to punch him and make him bleed to death. If he could even die, that is. Then you should also know I hate you even more now. Of course. Why did you do that? I muttered, trying to hold my rage. It wasn't a good idea going mad almost in front of the whole staff. I was kind of far away, but yet I was afraid they could hear me. Oh, dearest, you know the reason, he said in a kind of sarcastic tone. Even though it would have been much easier and way less painful if I had known your name instead, he concluded, staring once again. I froze in my tracks. He would have killed me and would have spared them if only he had known my name. That made it even worse. 2 lives instead of 1. This detail makes me look even more selfish now. But don't blame yourself. You didn't know after all. Of course I blame myself. You see, this is what happens when you get involved with things that you don't even understand, he said nonchalant, getting closer to me all of a sudden. I felt my heart jump and held my breath. He then placed both hands on my shoulders, lowering a bit of my height so that our faces were closer now. But I think you've learned the lesson now, he whispered, a tone that seemed like a warning. I finally started to shed some tears, but they weren't for fear. He wiped them away and I slapped his filthy hand away. Don't be so sad. You should try seeing the bright side of your situation. You're still here. Doesn't that count for you? But at what cost? I'm sure it's a worthy price. He giggled. He enjoyed my pain, and he knew he was going to make me regret everything. Now he was trying to make me feel even worse about myself. So I decided I needed to be strong. For both of them. I'll fire myself, because I guess that's what you wanted. Good. And indeed, you are clever, see? Wait, I'm not done. I have one last condition. He didn't even seem surprised. Go ahead. Know that you shouldn't be in a position to be able to give conditions. I just want to know 2 more things. Come on. I don't think that is too much. Seems fair. I'm listening. I have been asking this to myself for a long time, but I've never found an answer. How is this park still a secret? How are they able to avoid these things getting out by people who visit? Life is not fair sometimes. You must ask for a little help, even if you probably don't like certain individuals, he said, crossing his arms behind his back. And besides, if you don't remember something, you can't really give an opinion. Isn't that right? He answered, lowering his tone. I felt like he was smiling. This obviously could have meant only one thing, and honestly, The thought that someone from the high ranks could have asked his help makes me even angrier. Still, I have no idea how the heck he was able to do that. I don't know. I am sorry, I can't answer all of your questions as well. And what about your name? He tilted his head. Host. I think he lied, but I'm not sure. It's not even a real name. I went home after that. I'll just leave this place. I decided that I will be safer. I believe there are some questions that I will never truly find an answer for. Who is him, exactly? But above everything else, what is this place, really? Again, thank you for all your support and being there for me. I promise I won't disappear, and trust me, I will keep my promises. I hope time will help me heal, but I don't believe it will happen anytime soon, because I can hardly forgive myself. When I started walking away from the gruesome scene, and after what I had just heard, he was still there, observing me. He waved me goodbye. We both know it may not be over, because I swear that it heard like in the back of my mind, his voice telling me, "See you soon, see you soon, see you soon, see you soon."